I have been getting the same question over and over again from real estate entrepreneurs, capital raisers, passive investors, CEOs of real estate companies. And that question is, given the amount of uncertainty in the marketplace right now because of COVID, should we be doing deals? Are there any deals that make sense right now? And so to answer that question, we created a webinar with 3 panelists that are elite, savvy, sophisticated real estate entrepreneurs to ask them that exact question. We've got a senior living consultant, which is obviously interesting given the amount of attention to that space. Jillian Hellman, who is the CEO of Realty Mogul, one of the most premier crowdfunding portals in the United States. And Josh Satin, who is the director of acquisitions over at Gelt, has about $1 billion under management. So these 3 people answer that question. And then, of course, we get into the details. So you can get access to that free webinar at cfcmentorshipprogram.com/doing-deals. And I'll see you on the inside. Look, we all know that real estate has created more millionaires than pretty much any other business. The problem is, it's also created a lot of heartaches and bankruptcies. Sure, we can get access to a ton of real estate education on the internet, but that's precisely the problem. How can we tell which strategies will consistently produce asymmetric returns and which should be avoided at all costs? My goal is to give real estate entrepreneurs, capital raisers, and investors all of the secrets so that we can grow our portfolios without dealing with costly investment nightmares. And that's what this program is all about. I'm Hunter Thompson, and welcome to the Cashflow Connections Real Estate Podcast. Well, it's happened. Another presidential election cycle comes to a close in the United States. I went to bed the first night of voting. All the Vegas betting odds sites had Trump up. And then I wake up and the Vegas odds were flipped over with a very strong Biden likelihood of a win. And now looks like it's done. The Trump show has come to a close and now Biden's going to take office. It's very interesting. I'll have some political commentary, but that's not the point of this. Mainstream media looking at this pretty much as a total vindication of what they've been pumping all along, despite the fact, of course, that Trump actually got more votes this year than in 2016 and got a higher percentage of minority votes and such, despite the rhetoric that was pumped in the mainstream media. But they still are going to view it as a total vindication because a couple 10,000 votes here or there, and Biden ends up winning. Now, generally speaking, from a big picture perspective, all the important issues, the war on drugs, the international decisions in terms of foreign policy and such, there isn't much of a difference between political parties for sure, and definitely not between Biden and Trump in terms of debt and money printing and regulations and wars and stuff. But there is some important differences between the two in terms of what they represent. And to be honest with you, there's a couple things that I'm really passionate about. And one of those things is secession. I believe that the most pragmatic approach to bring about a free society in the United States, or otherwise, by the way, is a local or state level secessionary movement. And I believe that because of the divisiveness that Trump represents, that Trump and another 4 years of Trump would likely increase the likelihood of that happening sooner. So it's hard to see, but I'm a big fan of divisiveness because I believe it is imperative for people to realize that this is not a good system to have 320 million people with different political beliefs and different religious beliefs and different cultures and backgrounds, all controlled by one city of lawyers and lobbyists in DC, thousands of miles away from anywhere that I live. And that Trump was actually very good at exposing that, because for people that are kind of living in the world and view the world through the lens of we're kind of living in a 1984 information control censoring type of environment, Trump forced them to reveal their hands. And yes, we will censor you. Yes, we will ban you from Twitter if you share an article from the New York Post. That is not even being disputed. So I did like Trump for that, for sure. That's a small thing in the grand scheme of things, but you got to take the wins where you can these days. So I want to talk about this concept of secessionism and being a proponent of that. By the way, I was going to do this exact thing regardless of whether or not Trump won or lost. because it's not really consequential. Regardless of if you're a fan of either Biden or Trump, you likely feel like you're a hair away from a tyrant and a lunatic becoming in office, no matter which side of the argument you're on. And so it's really telling when you're just biting your nails trying to figure out who's going to get to run the entire military. Now, when it comes to secession, I'm a big proponent of the concept in general. It doesn't matter what the nature of your secessionary movement is. I'm pretty much going to be a fan of it. I would love to see Free State Project in New Hampshire, for example, or Texas secession, or Florida secession. I would even be a big proponent of a communist secessionary movement. Now, that's not really common. Typically, communism and socialism, they tend to be expansionary in nature, because when push comes to shove, they know they need to have people producing. If you have an incentive structure that rewards people that aren't producing, eventually you're going to run out of producers. You have to continually expand. But anyway, here's the point. Like I said, I was going to do this regardless of who won, because 320 million people, different backgrounds, all being controlled by one city is very challenging to see a way in which this isn't going to result in a permanent struggle in which red state versus blue state, people of different religions that have trouble with each other, people that believe abortion should be legalized and abortion should be banned. I don't see how this is not going to be a permanent challenge for the United States, because a million reasons, one of which is the diversity. And I think it's interesting that people that love diversity also think we should be ruled by one monolithic government overseeing all of us in every single aspect of our life, with one Department of Education and one central bureaucracy with overreaching laws that supersede state and local laws. That just sounds blatantly tyrannical to me. But with enough propaganda, you can convince people that it's the right thing to do. But during the elections, of course, you see how ingrained it is. No matter what happens, no matter how crazy the results may be or how tyrannical the person who is elected may be, we must maintain and increase the power of the government. So that's a terrifying concept to me. Now, if you're on board with the idea of secession, which is basically local or state governments withdrawing their consent, it's easy to say, yes, we need a secessionary movement, and then just move on with your life. But I want to challenge myself and the listeners of the show. If you're a fan of that concept and self-ownership in general, I don't want to get the impression that secession necessarily requires a massive geopolitical shift in terms of the paradigm, or requiring a big vote, or requiring 70 million people coming out and saying, we want a secession. I think that that's tactically impossible. And I think that there's a lot of reasons for that, obviously. But from my perspective, secession and personal responsibility can be done at a home level, a local level. It's basically mental, setting up your life from a place where you are seceded from all intents and purposes other than potentially the taxes that you pay. It's easy to push it off onto someone else. Oh, we couldn't get the votes because all these other people over here, oh, this one state over here didn't go our way. But that's not what's required to have a personal secessionary feeling or life, right? Having healthy relationships with people you love, building a business that's recession resistant, building a business online, creating a infrastructure to attract endless clients in all stages of the economic cycle, making money so that you can live a free and self-directed life. Either way, these are all things that are going to limit the interactions that we have in terms of how we depend on the government. Now, the bad news, of course, is that the government always grows in size. What is considered to be a right-wing conspiracy theory today will unquestionably be a mainstream bipartisan reality in 5 to 10 years. We're talking now about the Republicans saying, no matter what happens, we'll never get rid of the requirement to accept people on insurance with pre-existing conditions. 10 years ago, that was crazy town. So just understand that that's the way it's always going to go. I'm sure many of you are familiar with the book, The Road to Serfdom. There's a reason that the government grows and grows and grows and grows, provides more people, more services, and you can never take away those services or products or anything like that. It's only going one direction, but that's it. That's the bad news. Now we accept it. We're not going to complain. We're going to play the game. in a way that's fun, in a way that's lucrative, in a way that inspires other people, in a way that we can touch a bunch of other people's lives. Because I don't want to get stuck thinking, oh, what if this one politician had won 3 years ago or 4 years ago? Or what if this law hadn't been passed? Or what if this regulation hadn't been passed? It's all about looking into the future and saying, how can I maximize the resources I have in front of me on an individual household basis? And what I mean by maximize, it's not about sitting on top of a mountain full of money. It's about how much positive influence can I have in the world? And how much of a self-directed life can I create for myself and the people that I love? So I'm a big fan of the secessionary movements in general from a political standpoint. But like I've mentioned many times in this program, the capitalist approach to secession can be done at an individual, household, relationship-based level, and it doesn't require a massive paradigm shift in the political environment. And it's a very, very powerful concept. So hopefully, given the political climate today, there is going to be a lot of people that are looking for answers. And this is the most pragmatic approach if you're a fan of personal freedom. I have been getting the same question over and over again from real estate entrepreneurs, capital raisers, passive investors, CEOs of real estate companies. And that question is, given the amount of uncertainty in the marketplace right now because of COVID, should we be doing deals? Are there any deals that make sense right now? And so to answer that question, we created a webinar with 3 panelists that are elite, savvy, sophisticated real estate entrepreneurs to ask them that exact question. We've got a senior living consultant, which is obviously interesting given the amount of attention to that space. Jillian Hellman, who is the CEO of Realty Mogul, one of the most premier crowdfunding portals in the United States. And Josh Satin, who is the director of acquisitions over at Gelt, has about $1 billion under management. So these 3 people answer that question. And then, of course, we get into the details. So you can get access to that free webinar at cfcmentorshipprogram.com/doing deals. And I'll see you on the inside.